So we are going to talk about inflammation tonight. A lot of you probably registered for the class that I did in January, and then we had that massive snowstorm. And so there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that talk went 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and it was way more than what people could pack into their brains in that amount of time. It was so much information. It was absolutely fantastic, but it was just too much. Now the good news is that you have all the information I covered is in your notes. So it's there, but you won't get all the explanation behind everything in the notes. And so you're going to get about half of what I did in that class. And so that's good news. For some of you that might be bad news. So the good news is that hopefully it's going to last an hour, what we're going to talk about tonight. And so the topic was inflammation. And so inflammation, everybody's probably seen it or felt it before. If you sprained an ankle and your ankle swells up, that's inflammation. If you get a sunburn and your skin turns red, that's inflammation. However, what most people don't know is that their inside of their body can become inflamed, and you don't feel it until it's too late. And so there's a Dr. Barry Sears, that I'm going to quote a lot of his work, and he says, classic inflammation hurts, that's your ankle sprain. Silent inflammation slowly kills, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is silent inflammation. And so let me just tell you first off a study that was published in the Archives of Internal Medicine in 2009. And it was where they studied 24,000 people, and they looked at lifestyle and how that impacted major diseases, namely cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and having a stroke. And they found that if people did 4 simple things, they would have a 78% less chance of dying of one of those diseases. 78% is a big, big deal. And so those 4 things were: don't smoke, don't be overweight, eat a healthy diet, and exercise regularly. Healthy diet meaning lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, little animal products, little processed foods. Exercise regularly being 3.5 hours of cardiovascular exercise total in a week. And so it's not necessarily rocket science to take care of the human body. The problem is that in our country, we have a real crisis. We really don't have a healthcare system. We have a disease care system. In our country, we wait for people to get sick, and then we decide what's the appropriate treatment to manage that disease. The truth is that the cure for cancer and the cure for heart disease is prevention. In fact, heart disease is 100% preventable based on diet, and we'll go through some of that research tonight. And yet it's the #1 killer of people in our country, 100% preventable based on diet. And so as one medical doctor said, he said, we're not interested in prevention because there's no money in it. And as another medical doctor said, a wave of good health would put us out of business. So you have to realize that your health is your responsibility. It's not your doctor's, it's not your insurance companies, and it's not the government's. And there's no pill or surgery or insurance program that can make up for 6 years of eating crappy food and sitting on your couch. And so tonight we're going to talk about what I think are the most important dietary things. And the studies that I will show you, I think, will prove that it is the most important dietary things. And so in fact, open up the page where it says your body is fat. Some of you it will be your first page. Some of you it will be your third page, right? And is everybody there? Okay, so the reason why fat is important is because every single cell in our body is made up of fat. There's a layer of fat, 2 layers technically, that make up the cell. They surround the cell, and what's inside the cell is the cell, and what's outside the cell is not the cell. And so every single cell in our body is made up of fat. Now the fats that we eat determines how well our cells function or not function. And so we're going to talk about fats that cause inflammation and fats that can decrease inflammation. So going back to the example of a sprained ankle or a sunburn, so think about that ankle or think about that sunburn. If you have a sunburn, it's more sensitive to the touch, right? It's more painful, but also the tissue can be damaged more easily. If you scratch it, the tissues, the cells will break apart easier than normal skin that's not sunburned if you scratch it. When the inside of your body becomes inflamed, it breaks apart more easily, particularly your cardiovascular system. In fact, the cause of heart disease is inflammation. When your blood vessels become inflamed, that's when the cells can tear and plaques can bind on to the blood vessels, creating a clot. And so you can have all the cholesterol in the world floating around inside of your body, and if your blood vessels are not inflamed, none of it will stick. Your blood vessels are like Teflon coated, and everything slides and it's smooth and it's fantastic. When they become inflamed, that's when they can break down, and then cholesterol binds on, and then you get a plaque. And so in our medical system, you know, people die, we look at the clots or the plaques and we say, aha, cholesterol created this plaque. Well, that's the cause of the problem. It's like finding a dead animal on the side of the road, and you go and you look at it, and there's maggots eating it. Well, the maggots killed the animal. Okay, so that it's not the cause. Right? And so we won't go too in depth into some of the mechanisms of heart disease, but let me just reference on the back of one of your pages. I think it's page probably 3 for everybody. There's a list of references, and there's a book called No More Heart Disease. And this Dr. Louis Ignarro talks about how heart disease is 100% preventable, and when you have it, it's curable and treatable, and you can literally reverse heart disease based on diet. And so if you're interested in heart disease, read his book, No More Heart Disease, and do what he mentions. Okay, so we're going to talk about fats in our diet, because that's what our body becomes made of. So if we eat fats that cause inflammation, our cells become inflamed. And again, they get damaged more easily, they break apart, they're a little bit swollen, and things aren't going to work properly, and our body breaks down. And so if your cardiovascular system breaks down from inflammation, you get heart disease. If your brain breaks down, depending on which part of your brain it is from inflammation, you get Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or whatever. And so there's a man, his name's Michael Pollan, the reference is in your page there. He wrote a book called In Defense of Food, and he calls this the theory of everything. Everything in your body will break down if it's inflamed, and conversely, you can also reverse all of that if things are working properly and you're not inflamed. And so on, again, what we said, the page to go to that said your body is fat. So you'll see with this part, inflammation, think of a sprained ankle. Okay, so from our diet, there's fats that cause inflammation. And you'll see in bold, there's one called LA, or linoleic acid. That's from vegetarian sources like nuts and grains and vegetable oils. And then the AA is arachidonic acid. That's from animal products. These are the main causes of inflammation in our body. We will talk in more detail about those. Okay, so here's where we get into the important stuff, where it says inflammatory foods include vegetable oils. These are oils, cottonseed oil, soy oil, sesame, peanut, grapeseed, caraway, corn, safflower, sunflower oils. Those oils are added to most processed foods. Almost any snack food or prepackaged food that you can, it's in plastic and you can open up and put it in your mouth, probably has one of those oils on it. So you're going to go home and you're going to look for foods that you're eating, and if it has those things, you want to start avoiding them. Now, there's one group of foods you never want to eat again in your entire life, and it's deep fried foods. So when you take that French fry or potato and you dip it into oils that cause inflammation, you're saturating it in inflammation. When you heat the oils, it creates something called a free radical, which we won't go into, that's really bad for you. When you smoke cigarettes, it's free radical damage that damages your lungs. So it's like smoking a cigarette, but for the rest of your body when you eat fried foods. In addition to it, causes inflammation. And so after tonight, I hope that you will never ever again want to eat anything fried. And a donut, in my opinion, is the absolute worst thing you could ever eat because it's fried in oils that cause inflammation. The frosting on it has partially hydrogenated oils, which we won't go into detail, but they're awful for you as well. There's free radicals in it, and then it has carbohydrates. You're going to learn tonight that when you eat carbohydrates, it makes you produce more inflammation. It converts these fats into more inflammatory foods. And so never eat a donut again, please. On that note, I just have to tell you a joke. So if you're a Latter-day Saint, you'll understand this. You know that, like for young men's, young women's, kids get together, right, and they have some sort of refreshment. And so I'm just waiting for the day that when they ask me to say the prayer to bless the refreshments, that my prayer will be, Heavenly Father, I pray that the carbohydrates in this food will not cause a blood sugar spike in these children, that will cause an insulin release and lead to their developing type 2 diabetes. We want to pray that the partially hydrogenated oils in the frosting of these donuts will not increase their risk for developing breast cancer by 3 times, increase their risk for developing Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And if it's possible, we also want to pray that the corn oil this was fried in will not cause inflammation, increase their risk for cancer, diabetes, having a heart attack, stroke, arthritis. Amen. So I just, my kids, if I see a donut, I take it out of their hands and I throw it away. All right, so now we're going to talk about the positive things. So you'll see there it says anti-inflammatories include EPA and DHA. Now those come from fish, and so fish oil is the very best thing that you should either be eating if you're eating wild fish or taking if you're not taking a fish oil supplement. Those oils are natural anti-inflammatories. Again, we'll go in detail about it too. Eggs, you've probably seen eggs being advertised as omega-3 eggs. They feed the chickens flax seeds, and then the chickens turn that flaxseed oil into the type of oil that's in fish, the DHA and EPA. By the way, EPA is the most powerful at decreasing inflammation. DHA is also the building blocks of your brains and your nerves. And so, again, we'll go through some studies for how that's going to help you as well. So now, the only vegetarian source of DHA is from seaweed and algae. It is really, really hard to be a vegetarian and not be completely inflamed. And so we're going to talk about some blood tests that you can do if you're interested to find out what your body looks like and how inflamed you may be. And vegetarians, from what I've seen on the tests that I've done, are the worst. And because you're not getting any of the good EPA or DHA unless you eat a lot of seaweed and algae, which most people don't do. So really tough to be a vegetarian and be totally healthy. Now there is a vegetarian source of an omega-3 oil. It's called alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA. So it's found in flax seeds, chia seeds, green leafy vegetables, and some other sources. And so omega-3 is a family name. All of the omega-3 oils decrease inflammation. However, when you eat the vegetarian source, your body has to turn that into the EPA, the kind that's in fish. And studies show that that process happens between 7 and 2%. So you'd have to take about 20 times the amount of flaxseed oil to get the same benefit from one serving of fish oil. So flaxseed oil is not a substitute for fish oil. And I want to make that clear. There are different things. Flaxseed oil is good for you. I wouldn't waste your money buying it though. I would buy flax seeds instead because you get protein, you get fiber when you eat the flax seeds. I'd also buy chia seeds. And so there are some other things there. Canola oil, hemp seeds, walnuts have a lot of the ALA, the good one that decreases inflammation, but they have more of the LA, the linolenic acid, that causes inflammation. And so, well, again, we'll get into more detail than that. So they're better choices than some other things, but they're not great, they're not good for you. All right, so I've got listed there, ginger and turmeric are, among several of anti-inflammatory herbs. And if you like those in your food, they're great, or you can take a supplement, and I recommend ginger particularly. And so, we've got it summarized there for you. There's those, the EPA, DHA, ALA, and then the ones that cause inflammation. Now, this Barry Sears that I've referenced, he says this is the ultimate key to wellness, and it's the ratio of the good fats to the bad fats in your diet. Now, we should be pretty darn close to a 1-to-1 ratio in our diet, because if we need to be inflamed, we should be. Inflammation helps us fight infection and bacteria and viruses, and if you sprain your ankle, inflammation sometimes is part of the healing process. However, and we'll go through this study later, there was a study that showed that the average American gets 26 times of the bad fats compared to 1 of the good fats in their diet. And again, if you're interested in this, we have a blood test available. You can find out exactly where you're at. And so Dr. Sears says, simply put, show me the amount of omega-6 and omega-3 fats in your diet, and I will show you your body's biological state, pro-disease or pro-health. Okay, so, can I borrow this? Thank you. And so you'll see there that the ideal ratio, again, should be about 1.5 to 1. Dr. Sears says you should be under 4 to 1 to be healthy. And by the way, mine's 3.9 to 1, and I want it to be better. And again, I'll show you my lab work later. And he says above 15 to 1 is dangerous. The worst I've seen for my patients that I've tested is 48.2 to 1, which scared me to death when I saw that. I could not believe it. And she actually wasn't a vegetarian, which I was surprised to. And then the next 3 worst people were all vegetarians, and they were in the 30s. So now there are studies that show that if your ratio is again high, that you are increased to develop cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, osteoarthritis, asthma, allergies, obesity, leaky gut, type 2 diabetes, chronic pain, dementia, osteoporosis, dry eye syndrome, rheumatoid arthritis, irritable bowel syndrome, stroke, multiple sclerosis, psoriasis, depression, anxiety, hostility, addiction, schizophrenia, anger, aggression, postpartum depression, Parkinson's, a lower IQ, bipolar disorder, decreased cognition, gallstones, heart arrhythmia, and increased symptoms if you're a type 1 diabetic. So like I said, if your ratios are out of balance, you're on board to get one of those diseases if you live long enough. And half of the people in our country nowadays will develop cancer, and 1/3 of people in our country will develop heart disease. And most people actually in our country are now going to develop more than one of these diseases. And so we are at a crossroads for the first time in modern history where children being born today have a lower life expectancy than their parents. Our diet has become so crappy kids are being fed so much junk that now we're seeing kids that are type 2 diabetics, children, and adolescents. There was a study published in USA Today where they said the average child has 1 vegetable per day. And it was a French fry. That doesn't count. That's not a vegetable. And so it's just unbelievable. And the wonderful thing is now that we all get to pay for it thanks to the government. So isn't that great? So let me talk about why we have so much of these oils in our food chain, and it's because of the United States government. So we subsidize 3 things in our country: corn, soy, and soybeans. Well, 3 things that are subsidized the most, I should say. Those foods, because they're subsidized by the government, are the cheapest forms of food available. That's why corn is in everything, including our gasoline now. And so corn oil causes inflammation. The problem with our meat in our country, and why we said that arachidonic acid is from animal products, we take a baby calf in our country when it's born and we stick it in a pin so it can't move and it can't burn calories because we don't want it to weigh more. The fatter it is, the more it weighs, the more money you get when it's sold. And so it can't burn calories. It has 9 times more fat than a cow that's walking around eating grass, and it eats nothing but corn until the day it dies. In fact, it eats so much corn is acidic, that it actually will create ulcers in their stomach and they will die. And so it's been figured out when is the appropriate time to kill the cow so that you can sell it, because if you let it go too long, it'll get really sick and die on its own. And if you're interested in watching a movie where they document that, it's called King Corn. It's in your notes. And so when we eat traditional beef in our country, it's full of inflammation, and we become full of inflammation. A cow that's walking around eating grass will have 9 times less saturated fat than a corn-fed cow. It will also have some good omega-3 oils in it from the grass, and it will have much less of the omega-6s. So meats, you really ideally should not be eating meats unless it's organic, it's wild, or it's grass-fed. So if you can find a local farmer that's slaughtering cattle, buy a quarter of his cow or whatever, but otherwise beef, you really should be avoiding it. Chickens are very similar. The good news with chickens, they have less fat than cows, and it's the fat that causes the inflammation. But chickens nowadays generally eat nothing but corn and soy because they've made it illegal to grind up the chickens and then feed it to the other chickens, thank goodness. And so on. If you're interested in that, you can see a movie called Food Inc. It's in your notes again. But so those chickens, again, are full of inflammation. Chickens do not naturally eat corn and soy. They walk around and they eat bugs, and they eat worms, and they probably eat a few seeds and things they get off the ground like other birds. So I don't know if you can even find chicken that's worth, that's really actually great for you. Again, the saving grace is if you get a chicken breast, you cut off all the fat. It doesn't have that much fat in it, but the fat that it does have is going to be bad for you. Okay? And so the problem with farm fish is that they generally eat nothing but soy, except for when they get sick and die, and then they grind it up into pellets and feed it to the other fish. That's in your notes. That's in a book called The Meat You Eat. So farmed fish, salmon, for example, will have some of the good omega-3 oils, but it will have almost as much as the bad omega-6 oils. And so I really would not eat a lot of farmed salmon. It actually it's the highest source of this arachidonic acid that causes inflammation that I could find in my research, farmed salmon. And again, it still has more of the good omega-3s, but you're getting a ton of the bad stuff when you eat farmed salmon. Wild salmon will have about 10 times less of the omega-6s, and it has a lot more of the good omega-3s, and it's less polluted than farmed fish. So if you can get wild cold water fish, then it's wonderful. That is Mother Nature's best source of these omega-3 oils. And think about for how many thousands of years people always lived by water sources, right? And fish was one of the main staples of their diet. And in modern agriculture, again, we've transitioned to eating grains, and corn is a grain, by the way, it's not a vegetable, and wheat and soy. So because the U.S. government subsidizes corn and soy production, that's why we have everything has corn oil and soybean oil in it. So for example, if you're eating salad dressings, Kraft salad dressings can be made from soybean oil. Other cheap dressings will be as well. There's a better brand, it's called Brianna's. It's fantastic. They use canola oil and olive oil. It's a higher quality ingredient, and it's better for you. And so you want to start looking on, you think you're doing a good thing eating a salad, and then you pour all this soybean oil on it, it causes inflammation. So you really need to start reading labels of everything that you're eating, and you want to avoid these oils from your diet. Now let me mention too, again, it's about balance. And so you do need some of these omega-6s in your diet, and if you're eating enough of the omega-3s, then you can have some of the omega-6s. But again, the average American's out of balance by 26 times. And so for pretty much everybody in this room, you really are going to need to cut out on it. We're going to turn the page, and we're going to be on the page that says best foods to consume for health and disease prevention. And so I've got fruits and vegetables on there. I think they're the absolute best. They're full of antioxidants and other vitamins and minerals. They have lots of water in them. They have lots of fiber in them. And so I'd encourage you to eat as many fruits and vegetables as you can. I recommend to my patients at least 5 per day. 10 is wonderful. And in fact, the American Cancer Society recommends eating 10 fruits and vegetables per day to significantly decrease your risk of developing cancer. By the way, 5 fruits and vegetables per day will lower your risk of developing all types of cancer by 35%. Now again, why don't we know this? Why don't we tell people this? Because if we prevent cancer, the Huntsman Cancer Institute goes out of business, and we make several hundred thousands of dollars by treating cancer. Breast cancer, because they're breasts, we talk about them so much more than other kinds of cancer, even though more women die from heart disease than breast cancer by far. But anyways, breast cancer, there was a study that showed that if you eat 5 fruits and vegetables per day, it will lower your risk of developing breast cancer by 33 to 50%. There was another study that showed that if women exercise 3 times a week, it will lower the risk of developing breast cancer by 25%. So if you did both of those things together, you'd have between 75% and 68%, 58% less chance of developing breast cancer. But again, people go out of business if we start preventing diseases, and if a Dole fruit company advertises that they have a cure for cancer, the FDA will sue them and shut them out of business because they're controlled by the pharmaceutical companies. So realize that healthcare in our country is not about disease prevention, and it is not about health. It is about disease management. You have a disease, let's match the best drug or surgery for your disease, and you usually have the disease for the entire rest of your life. It's not about fixing the cause of the problem. Right? And really with cancer, the cure is prevention. So, wild cold water fish. I've listed the different fish that are the best ones to eat. Beans. Beans are fantastic, except for garbanzo beans, because they have 30 of the omega-6s to 1 of the omega-3s, and soy is 8 to 1. But other beans are mostly 1-to-1 ratio, and so beans are fantastic, good source of protein. So flax seeds and chia seeds, we already talked about those. Now, other nuts and seeds, all other nuts and seeds have more omega-6s than omega-3s, and if you're going overboard on nuts, you're going to be inflamed. I told you that my ratio was 3.9 to 1, which is good, but I want it to be better, and I think my problem was 2 things. Too many nuts. I was eating a giant handful of almonds every single day. And then also too many granola bars, like Nature Valley granola bars, has sunflower oil added to it. I think it's some kind of nut bars I was eating. I probably had 1 of those things a day. And so I've cut back on those. I'm going to redo my blood work in a couple months and see where I'm at. And I'm expecting it'll be even better. And so you don't want to go overboard on nuts. And again, that's a big problem for vegetarians. And so let me talk about that more. So vegetarians, you can be a vegetarian and eat nothing but Coca-Cola and peanut M&Ms. So being a vegetarian does not mean that you're healthy, although I think vegetarians are more conscientious than most people about trying to eat good. But if they're not eating fish, they're not getting the good omega-3s. And if they're eating good, healthy whole foods like grains, which we'll talk about, and nuts, which we already did talk about, they're going to be way inflamed because they're just eating so many of the omega-6s by default, because they're not eating meat, and nuts are, have protein and fat that make it feel full. Right? And so don't go overboard on nuts. I would do 1 serving of nuts per day. Same with seeds again, except for chia seeds and flax seeds. Okay, so whole grains, that's number 5 on my list. Whole grains are good. But again, they have a little bit of the LA that causes inflammation. And so again, if you're a vegetarian and you're eating tons of whole grains, you think they're healthy, but you're going to have way too much inflammation. Also, a really important part about grains, hopefully everybody knows that when you eat any type of carbohydrate, it eventually gets broken down into sugar, right? Whole grains, it's slower, so it's easier on your body. Wonder Bread and stuff like that, it's really, really fast. Oh, I put lemon potatoes on that list of vegetables because it's so starchy that it's really easily converted into sugar. So if you're interested in losing weight, limiting your carbohydrates is the key. Because when you eat carbohydrates, it gets turned into sugar. Sugar causes your body to release insulin. Insulin causes your body to take that sugar out of your bloodstream, stick it into your cells to store it as fat. That's what insulin does, makes you store sugar as fat. And so when you're eating carbohydrates, you're saying store more fat. And this is why diets like the Atkins diet work, because when you don't eat carbohydrates, your body puts out a hormone called glucagon that is the opposite. It tells your body to dump out your fat stores because you got to start burning that for fuel because you're not having any carbohydrates come in. So insulin is what makes you fat and what keeps you fat. And if you want to lose weight, you've got to cut back on your carbohydrates. Fruits and vegetables, wonderful. And I'm talking about grains really when I talk about carbohydrates, except for potatoes. Okay? And again, corn is not a vegetable, it's a grain. Goat milk products. Goat milk's really, really low in that ratio. It's like 2 to 1. I wouldn't do a lot of cow products. For example, there was a study that showed that, well, they were linking the increased dairy consumption to increased cancer rates. Cancer is when your body grows too much, right? You turn on genes that cause you to grow when you shouldn't grow, and that's what cancer is, cells that grow out of control. And so they were saying that because there's all the growth hormones in the dairy that we consume in our country, that's one of the reasons why we have an increased rate of cancer, because we're growing uncontrollably because we eat all these hormones all the time. So I would not eat dairy unless it's organic. So now, number 7, wild, free-range, organic, and grass-fed meats. We already talked about that. I do believe that we should eat meat sparingly. It's in your notes. It's called the China study, and it proves that if you eat too much protein, it turns on genes that cause cancer. All right, and so they recommend limiting your protein intake to 5% or less of your calories per day. So I would recommend not eating meat every day. You should have several days in the week where you're not eating meat. When you do eat meat, the best one to eat by far is cold water fish. Okay? Unless weight loss is your goal, then eat more meat, and then when you lose your weight, probably eat less. Okay, so other tips there. I've got vegetable spreads, list them for you. They're there. Oils to cook in. So canola oil has a 2 to 1 ratio, 2 of the bad to 1 of the good. So it's bad for you, but it's a lot better than a lot of the other stuff you'll see. So those ratios, that's all what they refer to. Okay, you've got the bad in the front, the good behind it. Okay, so canola oil is too unstable. You don't want to pan fry with it. Olive oil and coconut oil or butter are better for that. By the way, coconut oil is wonderful for you. Some people think it's bad because it has a lot of saturated fat in it. But the fat that's in coconut oil, it's a shorter molecule, and our body is able to turn it into energy very readily, as opposed to storing it as fat. Coconut oil is absolutely fantastic.
Is it a solid?
And it is solid at room temperature, yes.
Yeah, I saw it at Costco.
Yeah, and so coconut oil is fantastic. Palm kernel oil is okay. If you're going to cook, butter is okay. If you're using recipes, you can substitute applesauce for the oils. You can also substitute ground up flax seeds for your oils. If you're grinding up flax seeds or you're buying pre-ground flax seeds, you need to keep them in your freezer because if you don't, they do something called oxidation, which creates free radicals, which again is the same stuff that damages your body when you smoke cigarettes. And again, we will not get into that, but there's some of that in your notes. And so I mentioned about salad dressings. I mentioned about substituting ground flax for eggs, instead of oils. Nature's Path cereals and bars are really good. They have low ratios of these oils, especially if you buy the ones with flax. The best nuts to eat, I've got those listed there. I've got the worst nuts listed for you. And so foods that are really high in arachidonic acid you want to avoid: kidney, liver, pork, sausage, soy substitutes, and again, grain-fed, non-organic meats. Okay? And so again, I've got the references for where you can find out more on that. I've got those oils listed for you. You can see cottonseed oil, sunflower oil, soy, all these different oils with the ratios that they had and how you're getting so much more of those oils. And again, they're in almost every processed food, and again, all fried foods. Never eat anything fried again. I've got fish there that you should never eat: orange roughy, pompano, carp, light tuna, and tilapia. And so, for example, all tilapia is farmed that we get in our country. It comes from Chile. The fish naturally, so unless you're in Chile catching one, you're having farmed tilapia. And farmed tilapia has twice as many of the AA, the really, really bad one, compared to the omega-3, so never eat tilapia. And warm water fish generally have more mercury in them than cold water fish. And tuna, for example, is only safe to eat once a week because of the mercury content in it. And so we've already talked about the farm fish. And so let's see, we've got the ratios there. Okay, so now we're going to come down to recommendations. And so you can see there that the ideal ratio to take them in is twice as much of the EPA to 1 of the DHA. Don't get too hung up on that. If you're taking a fish oil supplement, that's good enough. Now, if you have no chronic diseases, I recommend 2,700 milligrams. And if you're one of my patients, I've told you that number before. So that's 2,700 milligrams every single day for the rest of your life of DHA plus EPA. We will go through studies in a moment that prove why that's so important. Now, if you're overweight, have type 2 diabetes or heart disease, you should be taking 5,000 milligrams of those things until your disease goes away. Now, if you have chronic pain, you should be taking 7,500 milligrams per day, and it might take up to 120 days for your pain to go away. There was a study that showed that people with disc herniations, that if they just took a fish oil supplement, their pain, most of them would go away. There was another study that showed that people had knee arthritis, and they took a fish oil supplement, that I believe it was 62, it might have been 68% of the people got off of their anti-inflammatory drugs and had zero knee pain. Now, their arthritis didn't change. Arthritis means inflammation of a joint. So the x-rays will look the same, but it's not as inflamed anymore, and so it doesn't hurt. And so then you can see for neurological disorders like schizophrenia, depression, bipolar, that kind of stuff, you can take up to 10,000 of these oils per day. Now, children need more DHA than EPA because their brains are growing. I told you that DHA is what helps your brain grow. Your brain is 2/3 fat, and it works much better when it's made of fats that are found in fish compared to fats found in beef or dairy or whatever else. And so you should get a child supplement that has more of the DHA in it. And we'll go through studies again about brain development and DHA in just a bit. I would always recommend keeping your fish oil supplement in your refrigerator or your freezer so that it is not oxidized and there's not free radicals in it. Tips on taking that fish oil supplement to avoid getting fish burps is that you should take it right before you eat. That way the oil mixes in with your food, and drink as little water as possible when you do that. Water and oil don't mix, and so if you drink a lot of water on an empty stomach when you take this, the oil is going to float on the top of the water because the water's heavier. You're going to get fish burps. And so take them right before you eat, drink as little water as possible, keep them in your freezer. If it still bothers you, you can buy a fish oil supplement that's enterically coated, which means it will digest in your small intestine, not your stomach, so you shouldn't taste it. And you can also buy a fish oil supplement with something called lipase in it that helps you digest the fish oil so you don't taste it. Okay, so any questions on recommendations of what you should take per day? Yes?
Would you recommend it in a liquid versus a pill? Or
Not
the fish
necessarily.
oil?
No, not necessarily. And I'll talk about the specific fish oils that we sell here before you go, and we have some liquids, we have some capsules. I'll tell you the differences between them. But I'm just concerned about the amount you get, and I don't care what form it comes in.
But definitely a pure fish oil.
Oh yeah, thanks, let me mention that. So yes, you should get something that's purity certified. It says on there that it's purity certified, it's filtered. The process they use it to filter, it's called molecular distillation. Or it might just say it's free of mercury or other contaminants like PCBs and things like that. And so if it doesn't say that, then it's not filtered. And by the way, there was a lawsuit involving several companies. I think one of them was Twin Labs, another was Walgreens, CVS Pharmacies, where they said their fish oil supplements were purified and somebody tested them and they weren't. They had mercury and other pollutants in them. So we use a brand here, Metagenics. They have a third party check it. It's a fantastic product, very high quality. I highly recommend it. And I think it's worth the money to know that you're getting something good and that's not polluted. And one other thing too to look at in a fish oil supplement is what's called a triglyceride. We've all heard of triglycerides before. Those are fats. We digest and absorb triglycerides better. That's what they're found in nature in these fish. The form that is in other supplements that are not triglycerides is something called ethyl ester. Now, they're not going to advertise it because they don't want you to know it's not as absorbable. And in ethyl ester, there's a chemical process they use that changes it to this unnatural state. And it's a little less absorbable. But that's the least of your worries. I'd rather have you take a fish oil supplement even if it's in ethyl ester form. You'll absorb most of it. Okay? Yes?
Is it better to take the 2,700 milligrams? Is it better to span it like twice a day or take it all at once?
Doesn't matter. So he asked if it's better to take it throughout the day or all at once. If you get fish burps, spread it out. And if you don't get fish burps, take it all at once.
Also, is it the same for kids?
For kids, it would be less. And, I would say that if kids are, under 3 years old, probably 500 milligrams total per day would be good. Under probably 12 years old, about 1,000 milligrams per day would be good. And then after 10 years old, 12 years old, I would really be doing the adult recommendation for them.
And if you eat fish, how much do you get from fish?
A serving of wild salmon has about 4,000 milligrams. So when I eat fish, I don't take my fish oil supplement that day. If I did, it'd still be really good for me. But you don't have to. By the way, one of the doctors that I really learned a lot about this from, his name is Dan Murphy. He takes 10,000 milligrams per day, every single day. And his ratio, I think he said it was like 1.9 to 1 or 1.7 to 1. And so super, super, super good. So the only risk of taking too much of these is bleeding. They thin your blood. And so if you're on a blood thinning medication, you need to work with your medical doctor and take less of your blood thinning medication. Don't take less of your fish oil supplement, just take less of your blood thinning medication. By the way, what time is it? How are we doing on time? Quarter to 8, great. So hopefully we'll get you out of here not too long after 8. Okay, so now, if you'll turn to a page that says, in the middle, it says things never to eat. Above it, it says the previous lists are natural whole foods. Everybody got a food target. Sean, can I borrow yours? So it might be black and white, and you might have 2, which you don't need, and if you want to leave us the extra one, you can. But on this food target, it goes from, bad choices to the best choices. And so you might be overwhelmed with this, with changing your diet. And let me just tell you, it's taken me 11 years to get to the point where I am at with my diet, which is really, really good. Could be improved a little bit, but it's really good, especially compared to what it used to be. So it's about progress and improvement. So I don't want you to get overwhelmed. This will help you move towards the center of better and better and better foods. And so on this list here, I only listed natural whole foods. I'm assuming you know that you should not be eating Doritos and drinking Diet Coke and stuff like that. Right? And so this is like you're trying to eat healthy, and we're really fine-tuning it. And if you're not to that point, then this can help you get to the point where you're at least eating more fruits and vegetables and whole grains and nuts in the first place. You're not eating all the processed junk foods. Right? So thank you. All right, oh, this was a good line here. So I talked about, these fast foods. So I said the only reason to eat these is if one of these places, or the only reason to eat at one of these places is to avoid starvation, unless you want to die earlier. So really, I'm serious. The studies that we're going to go through are going to blow your mind. And I want you to not take my word for it. I want you to be convinced, because that's the way that I am. When I understand something, it motivates me to live a certain way. And if it just sounds like somebody's opinion, then that's nice, but it's probably not going to, for me, it's not going to change me. And I'm probably more analytical than most people. And so at any rate, the studies that we're going to go through, I think will prove everything that I've told you tonight. So now, I've got things never to eat. Again, partial hydrogenases, deep fried foods, MSG, aspartame, and some other excitotoxins that kill your brain, which we're not going to go into. And so now, this is fantastic, this section that I have for you there of books and movies that you can learn more about these things. There's a doctor listed there that cured herself of MS. You can see her talk on YouTube. And she did it by eating fruits and vegetables and wild meats. Right? And so there's all sorts of fantastic stuff. And I gave you a bunch of resources. So we're going to move on to studies, unless anyone has any questions about foods, things to eat, things not to eat, and why inflammation is bad in the first place. Again, inflammation basically causes your body to break down. And whatever part of your body becomes inflamed, it breaks down. And the reason why Dr. Sears says it's silent inflammation, because it might take decades before you feel the pain. 50% of people that have heart disease don't know it, and the first warning they get is they have a heart attack and they die. So it's too late. You don't get a second chance. 50% of the time with heart disease. Think about cancer. By the time you find out you have cancer, there's a very good chance you're going to die. You do not want to wait to feel awful to take charge of your health, because it's probably going to be too late. Having said that, there's a potential for healing. As long as you are alive, there is a potential for healing. But for some people, there's a point where it's too late. You cannot unboil an egg. And so you really need to take these things serious. And hopefully, for everyone here, hopefully you can teach your kids, your grandkids, how to eat, so they're not looking at the same problems that most Americans have. One really quick thing, I mentioned about insulin. Type 2 diabetes is when you've been eating so many carbs throughout your whole entire life that your body doesn't even respond to insulin anymore. It's like your body's worn out from it. And so you have to crank out more and more insulin to get the sugar into the cells. It's kind of like this. If I touch my skin, I notice it for maybe a few seconds because I stimulate those nerve receptors, but then if I just leave it there, pretty soon I don't notice it anymore. They just stop firing. So when we have a stimulus that's repeated, our body becomes less sensitive to it. And that's true for internal things and external things. And so insulin resistance is when your body gets worn out and desensitized to insulin. And then when you just can't control your blood sugar levels anymore, then you're a type 2 diabetic. Type 2 diabetes is 100% preventable based on diet. 100% preventable. And so anyways, one real interesting tip, a test you can do to find out if you're insulin resistant, go home and measure yourself around your waist, at your belly button, and then around your buttocks at its biggest point. And if your belly is bigger than your buttocks, then you're insulin resistant. And you've really got to cut down on the carbs. In fact, Alzheimer's is now being considered type 3 diabetes. It's diabetes of the brain. What that means is your brain is so insulin resistant, you can't get the energy, the sugar into the cells for the cells to work right, and that's why you can't think and you forget stuff. By the way, in your notes, there's a reference of a woman, she's a medical doctor, that cured her husband of Alzheimer's with coconut oil. Because coconut oil gets into your cells without insulin, and it's readily converted into energy. So his brain healed with coconut oil. So pretty cool
Which
stuff.
book is that?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know it's in your notes. I know it's there. I forget. Okay, so no questions, right, before we move on?
One quick one
Yeah.
about if you're gonna eat eggs or the omega-3 ones, the best.
Yeah, so he asked about eating eggs, and yes, I would recommend omega-3 eggs. I would much rather have you eat omega-3 eggs than organic eggs, because you can have an organic chicken that eats nothing but corn and soy. So you want eggs that are advertised as being omega-3 eggs, because they feed the chickens flax seeds and it turns it into the EPA and the DHA.
If you eat that, would you still do the fish oil? How much does it have in it?
Okay, so like most eggs will have about 350 of the omega-3 oils in them, whereas again, a piece of salmon has 4,000.
Right.
I mean, just like a regular, the size of a deck of cards piece of salmon, not even a big piece. And so eggs are the second best source of omega-3 oils, but they're not even close to fish. I mean, really, again, if you're not eating fish several times a week, you have to be on a fish oil supplement.
How many eggs a day?
How many eggs a day? I don't know.
Is there a
mean,
limit? I mean, is it okay to eat like 3 a day, or would you limit
It
that?
depends on what the rest of your diet is. So he said, is it okay to eat 3 eggs a day? Because eggs, they're packed with nutrients. They are high in cholesterol.
Yeah.
They are high in saturated fat.
Yeah.
So it depends on what else you're eating. If you're eating lots of fruits and vegetables and you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 eggs sometimes, I don't think that's a problem at all.
Really?
Yeah, but if you were eating 10 eggs a day to get all your omega-3 oils
Yeah.
instead
Yeah.
of eating
Just-
fish,
yeah.
then that could be a problem with your cholesterol over time. Although cholesterol is not the cause of heart disease, like we talked about. Again, read the book No More Heart Disease, and it'll prove it to you. Okay?
I've heard that all canned salmon is wild salmon because farm salmon goes too mushy in the can. Is that true or not?
No, it's not. So she asked, is all canned salmon farmed? No, it's not. If it's Atlantic salmon, it's farmed. And if it says Alaskan salmon, usually it's wild, but it'll say on there. And I know this because I bought both. So,
Question, my husband read this book, The Starch Solution, and it says not to take any omega-3s because they are full of mercury and things like that. We're better off not taking them at all than to fill our bodies full of all the contaminants.
okay, so her question was, this book called The Starch Solution recommends not taking a fish oil supplement because of the contamination. That's why you should buy a high quality brand that you know is not
That
contaminated.
makes a difference.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can't get it without.
100%, yeah.
One other question.
Yeah.
Potatoes, are they,
Potatoes, again, it's almost like eating sugar when you eat a white potato because they get so readily converted into sugar. So I wouldn't go overboard on potatoes. I would have some, I would eat the skin, but I wouldn't eat a lot of them.
What about corn that you just pick off?
Okay, so she says, what about
Just
corn?
Fresh corn and then you eat it right away.
Yeah, so again, it's a grain, so you're getting some omega-6s, so it's not great for you, but some corn, the rest of your diet is really good, and you're doing your omega-3s, some corn, sometimes it's gonna be all right.
So it's never a vegetable.
It's never, corn is not a vegetable, it's a grain.
One other question.
Yes.
I have read many articles on canola oil,
Uh-huh.
and they say it's a toxic oil, and you should not be using it.
Okay, so she asked about canola oil. So canola oil is genetically modified rapeseed, and
Uh-huh.
rapeseed is toxic to humans,
Uh-huh.
but canola oil is not.
Really?
Yeah.
But if it's coming from the rapeseed, how come it is not?
Because it's not rapeseed, it's been genetically modified to be something different.
Oh.
So again, canola oil, twice as much inflammation though when you eat it, but it's a lot better than soybean oil.
Is olive oil the same way though?
Olive oil, it has a lot of what are called omega-9s that are neutral as far as inflammation is concerned, but they do have omega-6s. So olive oil is okay to have some, but if you're doing a lot of olive oil, and it's true for almonds as well, then you're getting a lot of
Is there a
omega-6s.
difference between extra virgin, pure, and
Yeah, the
light olive oil?
So the extra virgin's better for
It's
you.
so strong though, so when I'm using the light, is that not benefiting me or is it actually?
It's just not as good. And so in the,
Yeah.
so when you process olive oil, the least damaged by the processing is the extra virgin. So that's why it's better for you. When you heat an oil, it causes it to break down and create something called a free radical, which is not good for you. And so that's why it's better to get the extra virgin stuff. Okay.
What are the best green leafy vegetables?
Best green leafy vegetables, kale, spinach, and then dark lettuces. So by the way, on fruits and vegetables, it's the nutrients that give those fruits and vegetables their color. So the more color you get, the more nutrients you're getting. The more variety of colors you're getting, the more variety of nutrients you're getting. For example, a red pepper, bell pepper, has more vitamin C in it than an orange. Think of that deep red color. An apple, all the nutrients are in the peel, and the middle is just sugar, fiber, and water. Yes?
So I was wondering, what is the best to cook with, like, if you're gonna saute?
So she asked, what's the best to cook with if you're going to saute? Okay, olive oil's good, butter's good, coconut oil, if you don't heat it up too much, coconut oil is good too. And so if you're interested in how high you can heat the oils, there's something called a smoking point. That's when you start to really damage the oil. And if you just, I don't know, Google search smoking point of oils, I'm sure it'll pull up a chart and tell you which ones, are better. And olive oil, for whatever reason, has a higher smoking point than canola oil, or excuse me, than coconut oil. Even though coconut oil is solid at room temperature, generally the more solid things are, the more stable they are. So I don't understand that, but that's the deal.
If you deep fat fried it in one with coconut oil or something like that, would that be okay? Or
Deep fried?
You don't do,
Never deep fry anything.
Oh, don't it,
you're gonna get
okay.
kicked out of the class.
Oh,
So equate deep fried foods with cigarette smoking.
oh, that's right.
Because you're getting free radicals that damage your body, that do something called oxidation. Everyone's seen oxidation before. If you've seen a car with rust on it, that's oxidation. Oxygen can produce free radicals that cause things to break down. Oxygen can literally eat holes in metal over time, especially if it has water mixed with it. And it can do that to the inside of your body. Oxidation causes your body to rust from the inside out, and that's why you don't want to deep fry things, because it creates free radicals. In addition to commercially, everything deep fried is usually fried in corn oil or other vegetable oils like sunflower oil and things that are bad for you. Any other? Yes.
If you had one oil in your house, what would it be?
Me, coconut oil.
Okay.
I don't see pecans here. Where do they fall?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. But let me tell you about this book. So all of those ratios I got from this book. It's in your notes. It's called The Ultimate Omega-3 Diet by Evelyn Tribole. And in the back, she has a list of foods and what's in them. And so let me see if I can find nuts real quick and tell you about pecans. Okay, so the ratio is 21 of the bad to 1 of the good for pecans. By the way, Virginia peanuts, 416 of the bad to 1 of the good, which is why I put peanuts on my don't eat list of nuts. So, by the way, I highly recommend this book, and she lists, again, a bunch of foods in the back where you can look up for yourself the different ratios of things to eat and things not to eat. So let me just quote some studies for you from her book, okay? So there was a study, well actually let me tell you this. So inflammation promotes blood clotting, increases chemical stress. She says the omega-6 fats create damaging compounds associated with arthritis, Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, stress, mood disorders, and cancers. She says, in fact, death from heart disease is predicted linearly from the amount of omega-6 in the body. What that means is the more omega-6s you eat, it's just like a ramp. The greater chance of developing heart disease. We'll probably go through this study. In fact, if you go to the very back page that has the blood tests, it's listed on there. It's a study, it's one of those studies at the very bottom at any rate. And it was from Japan, and they looked at men and how much omega-3s they had in their diet. And so it was inversely proportional with heart disease, meaning the more omega-3s you had, the more your heart disease went down. And the people that had the most omega-3s had a much greater chance, 90% less chance of developing heart disease compared to people that had the least amount of omega-3s. Okay, so she's going to go through in her book, and I won't go through all of them, but basically there are studies where, for example, with Alzheimer's disease, where they had people just do a diet of 4 to 1, 4 of the bad, 1 of the good, and their quality of life improved, but if it was anything above 4 to 1, it did not. There was one where asthma, where if you had a ratio of 5 to 1, which still isn't great or fantastic, your asthma got better, but if it was 10 to 1, your asthma got worse. There was a study that showed that the higher amount of omega-6s in your body, you have a greater increased risk of osteoporosis. Brain function showed that a ratio of just 4 to 1 was optimal for learning. And again, if it's lower, it's even better. Right? And so there was a study on breast cancer where they compared the women in their diets and found that if a woman's ratio was between 1 to 1 and 2.5 to 1, that they had the greatest the greatest lessening of breast cancer compared to other women. There was another study on cancer in the Journal of the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, where they found that people that have a ratio of 1 to 1 to 2 to 1 have a significantly lower risk of developing all types of cancer compared to other people. So people that have their ratios down to 4 to 1 are 70% less likely to die from cardiovascular disease than people that have rates higher than that. Colon cancer, there was a study that showed that there were improvements with colon cancer only if your ratio in your diet was between 1 to 1 and 2.5 to 1. There was a study that showed that if you have a high ratio of omega-6s in your diet, that you had a double risk of developing what they call dry eye syndrome, which is kind of similar to a disease called Sjogren's disease, compared to people that have the lowest ratios. If your ratio is 2 to 1, then animals can prevent insulin resistance and prevent diabetes. Animal studies show that. There was a study that showed that 2 to 1 to 3 to 1 ratios can get rid of pain from rheumatoid arthritis. There was a study that showed that a 4 to 1 ratio lowers the amount of stress hormones your body produces. And again, 4 to 1 is okay. That's not even like the best ones. There was a study that showed that women could have a 46% reduction in preeclampsia if they had a lower ratio of omega-3s in their diet. They didn't say what that ratio was, but again, a lower risk. There was a study done in Lyon, France in the mid-90s, and what they found, listen to this, there was a complete prevention of cardiac sudden death in participants eating a Mediterranean-style diet compared to the control group. And so people that had good fats in their diet did not die of heart disease, and the people who didn't improve their diets still did die of heart disease, at least some of them did. So it says an unprecedented lower death rate from all causes of cancer as well in the same study. You can lower your risk of developing all types of cancer by having a good ratio, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in just a second. Let's do another one. There was a study where people were hospitalized, and if they gave them an omega-3 supplement, their hospital stay was cut in half compared to people they didn't give to the supplement. By the way, do you guys remember, I can't remember how many years ago, I think it was 2005, where there were the miners in Pennsylvania, the mine collapsed, all of them died except for one. They pulled out the guy, he was in a coma. They put him in the hospital and they put him on 10,000 milligrams of omega-3 oils per day. He was supposed to be a vegetable the rest of his life, and he recovered near 100%. And I forget how long he was in the hospital, but the guy was almost brain dead, and his brain healed and recovered with 10,000 milligrams per day.
I guess we've lost a little bit.
Right, so, there was a study that showed that you can have a lower rate of rheumatoid arthritis by taking 2.7 grams of EPA plus DHA per day. So again, that's my daily recommendation. Listen to this. Omega-3 fats have been shown to block cancer in many studies. Some of the compounds made from omega-6 fats enhance the tumor-making process while suppressing the body's natural ability to get rid of cancer cells. You see, your body is always trying to fight cancer. Sometimes cancer cells start to grow, and if you eat omega-3s, then your body can fight it, and if you eat omega-6s, it's going to grow more. There's a doctor named Russell Blaylock, one of his books is in your notes. He tells his patients with cancer that if you eat omega-6s, it's like throwing fertilizer on crabgrass. It will make your cancer grow more. We'll go through a study to prove that in just a minute. Let's see. Psychologists say that there's stress triggers are produced by inflammatory compounds which trigger anxiety. So when your brain is inflamed, you don't feel very good and you're more anxious is basically what that means. There was a study that showed that fish oil can actually help lower your blood pressure. And listen to this. It says, half of the people that have heart disease have normal blood cholesterol levels despite changes in lifestyle and use of medications to lower blood cholesterol. The death rate from heart attacks in the United States is among the worst in the world despite people taking cholesterol lowering medications. And she says the cause is inflammation, not cholesterol itself. And there are studies that show that lowering your cholesterol, taking a fish oil supplement, will lower your risk of developing heart disease greater than taking a cholesterol lowering drug. Okay? But the reason why the people don't know that is because you can't patent it because it's natural. You can't sell it for $150 a bottle, but you can a cholesterol lowering drug. And I'm 100% serious. Even though it's more effective, that's why we don't do it in our country. In Europe, it's considered malpractice if you have heart disease and your doctor does not put you on a fish oil supplement.
Wow.
And here, it's just starting to get accepted. All right, so I mentioned this, and so when you eat these oils, when you eat the omega-6s and you eat the omega-3s, there's a ratio, there's a balance, it's a dance. And if you have too much of the omega-6s, your body turns the omega-6s into the arachidonic acid. That's the really bad one that causes inflammation. And if you have a lot of the ALA, which is the vegetarian omega-3, your body can again turn some of that into the EPA. But it's a balance. One thing that throws it out of balance is insulin. They found that insulin upregulates the enzymatic conversion of the vegetarian omega-6 to the arachidonic acid, which is the main thing that causes inflammation. And so this is why you don't want to eat a lot of carbs, and you should not combine your carbs with omega-6s, which is why I told you a donut was the worst thing in the world, because it's fried oils that cause inflammation, and then the sugar and the flour in the donut upregulates your inflammation, so you become even more inflamed than it's just if you drank a bottle of the same amount of oil. And so do not eat, if you eat nuts, do not eat them with carbs. Do not eat the honey roasted planters anymore. By the way, don't eat roasted nuts anyways, because they're usually roasted in these oils that cause inflammation. Just eat raw nuts, unless they're dry roasted. Unless they're dry roasted. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so I'm not a big fan of peanut butter sandwiches and almond butter sandwiches because you're combining omega-6s with carbohydrates. And again, you get an upregulation of the conversion of the omega-6s to arachidonic acid that causes inflammation. EPA in fish inhibits that conversion. So if you have more of the EPA, you convert less of those omega-6 vegetarian sources into the arachidonic acid, and you have less problems. Which is why I said you can eat some omega-6s if you're doing the other stuff good. And so, let's see. We're going to go through a number of studies, and if you have questions, let me know. Okay, so I told you wrong. I said 26.1. For the Americans, it's 25 to 1. So that was from the American Academy of Pain Management, 2006 is where that number came from. This is from the book, I've mentioned it in your notes, it's in Defense of Food, Michael Pollan, 2008. He says, eating too much eating too much industrial meat exposes us to more saturated fats, omega-6 acids, growth hormones, and carcinogens. And and again, if you want to read his book, you can find out all the details on that. Now, listen to this. This is from Molecular Neurobiology in 2001. There is growing evidence that EPA could play a role in hostility and violence in addition to the beneficial effects in substance abuse disorders and alcoholism. And so if you have an addiction and your brain is inflamed, it's going to make it that much harder for you to kick that addiction. So they said, listen to this, nutrition is an environmental factor that influences gene expression. So let me talk about that. People think in our country nowadays that our health and our lives are determined by our genes, and we're all like 99.999% the same. Our genes are all so similar. Our genes are like a dictionary, and how those words are put together to create the story of your life is up to you, and the choices that you make. And your environment is what causes your genes to be expressed or suppressed. And so there's a whole field called epigenetics where they study the factors that control your genes. And so something controls your genes. Your body knew how to have you stop growing at some point. And if you start growing again when you're an adult, that's cancer, and that's bad. So what's controlling our genes? And omega-6s are one of those things. We'll get to it in a second. Listen to this. This is about the benefits. It says the beneficial health effects of omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, were described first in the Greenland Eskimos, who consumed a high seafood diet and had low rates of coronary heart disease, asthma, type 1 diabetes, and multiple sclerosis. Since that observation, the health benefits of omega-3 fatty acids have been extended to include cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, and mental health. The omega-6-3 ratio is associated with normal growth and development, as well as the outcome of hypertension, cancer, arthritis, mental health, allergies, and other autoimmune diseases, as well as the pathophysiology of arteriosclerosis, inflammation, and aging. Listen to this. Omega-3 oils cause apoptotic death in cancer cells, where omega-6 oils allow the cancer cells to continue to proliferate. What that means is omega-6 oils cause cancer to grow, and omega-3 oils cause cancer cells to kill themselves, is what that means. It also says, psychological stress in humans causes an overproduction of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are hormones, which is minimized with an adequate level of omega-3s. If you are stressed, your body produces hormones that cause inflammation. And if you're more stressed, you probably should be taking more omega-3s because they stop that process. So the LA, again, the vegetarian source of omega-6, more than any other nutrient, is associated with shorter telomeres. Shorter telomeres are associated with aging, cancer, and coronary artery disease. What that means is your DNA has these things on the end of it called telomeres. And when those things get damaged and aren't there anymore, then you die. And so the more healthy your telomeres are, the longer they are, the longer you live. And omega-6s make them shorter and make you die faster, and from those diseases specifically. This one says positive effects of omega-3s on dementia, schizophrenia, and other central nervous system diseases have been reported. Clinical studies show that cognitive performance improves with omega-3s. Your brain is made up of fat. If you have the wrong fats, you cannot think as clearly. Daily administration of 3 grams of omega-3 oils for 3 months significantly decreased feelings of anger, anxiety, and aggression. There was a study, I've got it over here, I won't quote the exact study though, where, does anyone know what the biggest problem for the U.S. Army is right now?
Suicide.
Suicide. It's suicide. We have one soldier killing himself every single day, one active duty soldier. We have one veteran killing himself every single 80 minutes now in our Army. And it's suicide. And the reason why is because they get the government corn-fed, soy-fed, crappy diet, and their brains are inflamed. And they have done studies showing that if your brain is more inflamed and you have more of those omega-6s, you are much more likely to kill yourself. You have a greater risk of killing yourself than if you're in combat and you get wounded or your buddy gets his head blown off or something. It is more traumatic to have a bad diet, and you're more likely to kill yourself than seeing people die in combat or you being wounded yourself. And so they've done a study now where they're giving these soldiers, I think it was 2.2 grams of the omega-3 oils, and it's significantly lowering their risk of killing themselves. So if your brain is inflamed, all sorts of bad stuff happens. All right, so moving on to another study. This is 2011 from a journal called Prostaglandins, Leukotrienes, and Essential Fatty Acids. And it says too high omega-6 fatty acids contributes to the inflammatory status characterizing many lifestyle diseases. Animals fed a diet with an omega-6, omega-3 ratio of 9:1, as is in common in the diets of Western countries. Realize again, ours is 25:1 in our country. So they're saying 9:1 is bad. These animals develop adult obesity, high insulin levels, increased triglycerides, and increased high blood pressure. Animals fed only saturated fat with no omega-6 fatty acids do not become insulin resistant and do not become obese. So you've heard all along saturated fat is really bad for you. It's not necessarily great, but omega-6s are way worse, and those are the polyunsaturated oils that for 30 years the American Heart Association was telling us to eat more of. And that's why our increased risk, or our increased incidence in our country of heart disease and cancer kept getting worse and worse and worse. Because we were told low-fat diet, right? You eat the polyunsaturated ones, not the saturated ones.
I have a question.
Yes?
I take an EFA that's a combo, borage, flaxseed, and fish oil, and one of those is omega-6.
You're right.
Should I throw it away?
No, thank you for asking. So there is a type of an omega-6 that actually helps decrease inflammation, and it's found in borage seed oil, black currant seed oil, evening primrose oil. It's actually okay. It's the one omega-6 that's okay. I don't think you necessarily need to take it. You can. I think you're better off just taking a straight fish oil supplement. Okay. Any other questions on that one? Okay. So there's a study from Harvard Medical School, a man named Andrew Stoll. He's the guy that says that you want the EPA ratio of about 2:1 in your supplement to the DHA. And he says children receiving omega-3 essential fatty acid supplements made 3 times the expected normal gain in reading age and twice the normal gain in spelling age, plus benefited with dyslexia and ADHD behavior. If you have a child, they should be on a fish oil supplement. So that, I mean, that's almost unbelievable. A 3 times increased gain in reading and twice the increased gain in spelling with taking a fish oil supplement. Yes?
You gave us what the child intake should be, and I would like to know that again. You said under 3, it should be 500 milligrams?
Correct. And then under 12, I'd do 1,000 milligrams, and then over 12, I'd just do the adult ones.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so this one is from a journal called Journal of Affective Disorders, 2002. They say inadequate intake of omega-3s is associated with major depression, other affective disorders, including bipolar disorders. The prevalent rates of major postpartum depression symptoms are related to reduced DHA omega-3 fatty acid consumption from fish. So let me talk about that. If a woman is pregnant and she's not eating omega-3s, her brain will literally break down to give the baby those omega-3 oils so that the baby's brain can develop. However, neither the mother nor the baby will get as much as they should, and the mother has a greater increased risk of developing postpartum depression because her brain is breaking down. Studies show that if a woman has 2 children that are less than 18 months apart and she's not supplementing with an omega-3 supplement, baby number 2 will have a lower IQ than baby number 1, and that goes on for each child born after that, unless she starts taking an omega-3 supplement. I'm grateful I'm an oldest child.
What would you say?
All right, so this one's called the Journal of Arthritis and Rheumatism, 2002. They say that omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids play a role in halting or slowing degenerative and inflammatory factors that contribute to the progression of osteoarthritis. If you have arthritis, you should be taking a fish oil supplement. Your x-ray will not change, but your pain will. It also says it is well recognized that polyunsaturated fatty acids can play a key role in the progression or prevention of human diseases by affecting either cellular or membrane lipid composition, metabolism, or signal transduction pathways, or by the direct control of gene expression in a number of different tissues and cell types. When you eat omega-3s, your genes are controlled differently than when you eat omega-6s. So you're not controlled by your genes, your environment, and the most important thing about your environment is what you put in your body, is what controls your genes for the most part. You might have an increased risk of cancer, heart disease, or whatever, but it's a risk, it's not a curse. You develop those diseases, for the most part, some childhood things you're born with it, but most of those diseases are degenerative, meaning you develop it over time. This one's from the Archives of Neurology, 2003. It says those taking the highest levels of DHA had up to an 80% reduction in Alzheimer's disease. There was actually a newer study that just came out that showed the people that get the most have a 90% less chance of developing Alzheimer's disease. Now, there's an Alzheimer's disease foundation, and I think weren't they like one of the sponsors of, it was either the Super Bowl or the BCS National Championship last year, right? And they want you to donate money to their society. Why don't they tell people this? If people took a fish oil supplement and we had 90% less Alzheimer's disease, they go out of business, right? So our system is not geared around prevention, because lots of people lose lots of money if we prevent problems. This one is from Neurology, 2004. Olive oil and omega-6 fatty acids and the omega-3 fat found in plant sources like flax and hemp are not, never mind, we're going to skip that one. All right, so this one is from Russell Blaylock, his book that I mentioned. He has a book called Natural Strategies for Cancer Patients. I mentioned that already. He says, omega-6 oils inhibit immunity, promote inflammation, increase brain injury, impair cell function, promote platelet adhesiveness, and stimulate cancer induction, growth, and spread. We know that omega-6 fats increase free radical formation, yet they also increase cancer cell growth and speed. In addition, they make cancers more aggressive. So if you have cancer, you should avoid omega-6s like the plague because they make your cancer grow faster. And you should take an omega-3. All right, so we're almost done. There was an entire journal, it's from Britain, it's called The Lancet, it's highly prestigious. They had an entire journal dedicated to this, and it says supplementation with omega-3 fatty acids should join the short list of evidence-based life-prolonging therapies for heart failure. If you have heart problems, you should take a fish oil supplement. And so those are just some of the studies that, again, hopefully validate what we've been talking about. And so I've hopefully given you all the tools. It's written down in these notes for you to, if you have these diseases, start to reverse it, prevent these diseases, hopefully prevent them for your family members. And it should be really clear guidelines of what to eat and what not to eat. And so I would recommend that you take this home. I would read all of these papers every single day for a week so it's cemented in your brain so you don't have to think about it. Pick up a package of food, look at what's in it, decide whether or not you want to eat it. Okay, we're going to talk about lab tests so that you can know where your body's at. Before we do that, does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Where does soda pop fall? Just, I have a couple people.
Well, so there's no
that
fat in it.
Uh-huh.
So it's not going to cause inflammation directly, but it will cause inflammation indirectly because it's full of sugar. And sugar increases your upregulation of converting omega-6s into arachidonic acid, which causes inflammation. So soda pop is on the list of stuff I don't talk about because it's so obviously bad for you. You shouldn't drink it. Okay? So, can I borrow this real quick? All right. So everybody should turn to this page now. Okay, this is my blood work, so you can look and see where I'm at. And then if you want to find out where you're at, we'll talk about that. And so this comes in a little kit like this. If you want to buy one, they're $150. You pay for it tonight, and then you take it home. You do a fasting blood test, or prick. Where all you do is you prick your finger. There's 4 dots on the paper. You bleed to fill in the 4 circles. You let it air dry for 24 hours, fill out their paper, put it in an envelope, mail it in, and then they'll send me the results. And when I get the results, I will email it to you, fax it to you. If you're coming in to see me, I'll give it to you. And hopefully we've covered everything tonight so that you understand what it means. You don't have any questions. But if you do have some questions, then we'll talk about it. And if you have too many questions, I might ask you to come into my office and I might charge you some money for it. But most people, I haven't charged anybody yet for it. I'll put it that way. So if you're one of my patients, we'll just talk about it. And so anyways, that's that. We've got one for everybody if you want one. Now, so you're going to see on this handout at the very top those 3 good omega-3s that we talked about. And you can see, I'm like off the charts on the ALA, I'm off the charts on the DHA, I'm good on EPA. And so when I found that out, I decided to take a fish oil supplement that had more EPA than DHA. And I was doing, 2 tablespoons of flax seeds and 2 tablespoons of chia seeds per day. And so I cut that down to 1, just because I don't think I need that much based on this. Now, I wouldn't feel bad about being off the charts. I mean, that's really, really good, but you know, I just don't need that much. Okay, next you're going to see a list of these omega-6s. The ones I want you to focus on is the LA and the AA. The LA, again, is the vegetarian source of the omega-3s that is in grains in small amounts, it's in nuts, and it's in all the bad oils that we talked about, and conventional meats. Or excuse me, not conventional meats. Conventional meats will have the arachidonic acid. My LA was much higher than what I wanted to see, and I told you why. I think I was eating too many nuts and granola bars. And so my AA was okay. In learning, in researching this, I realized how much AA is in farm salmon, more than anything else I could find. So I'm not doing farm salmon anymore. And that was like, you know, if I go out to eat dinner, what am I going to have? Salmon, no brainer. Now I'm just having the salad, unless it's wild, which, you know, you can't really find at a restaurant unless you go to the Market Street Grill. So now you can see trans fats. I'm on the low end, but I thought I would be much, much better because I avoid those things like the plague. We're not going to talk in detail about trans fats. Just understand they're really, really bad for you. They're man-made. You should never eat anything that has trans fats in it or partially hydrogenated oils, and you have to read labels because the government allows food manufacturers to say 0 grams trans fats per serving. It's the max to buy it, even if there's trans fats in it, because if it has less than half a gram, they allow it. And you could eat a muffin that has 4 servings in one muffin and be eating 2 grams of trans fat. So you have to read labels. If it has hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils, you don't touch it, you throw it away. And so in my house, literally, if I see my kids touching anything with it, we throw it away. We go through their Halloween candy, that when they come home, we give them a nickel piece and we throw all the junk away. And so I wouldn't even give it to your neighbors. It's so bad. You're gonna, no, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. You're gonna triple a girl's risk for developing breast cancer if she eats a diet high in trans fats. Kids that were eating French fries when they had trans fats in them, if they ate 2 servings of French fries per week, had a 27% increased risk of developing breast cancer compared to kids that just had 1 serving in a week. So you never want to touch this stuff. Also, the increased risk for heart disease and brain diseases, and they're awful. So mine was, again, it was higher than what I thought it should be because I avoid that stuff like the plague. And so I'm gonna, if I know something has trans fats in it, I don't touch it. But sometimes I'd fudge if I was somewhere and they had, you know, something that I thought probably did, but I didn't know for sure. I might eat it, but now I'm not at all. And part of it too might be just I ate a ton of that garbage when I was a kid growing up. I mean, I ate so many potato chips and microwave popcorn and ice cream, and so I don't know if my body's still trying to get rid of all that junk that I ate when I was growing up. So next, you're going to see at the very, well, let's see, number 10, that is the most important thing. The AA to your EPA ratio. That's the ratio of how much of the omega-6s to the omega-3s. Mine's 3.9, that's pretty good. I want it to be better. At the very bottom, they have an index of omega-3s. We talked about how the more of those you have, it lowers your risk of developing heart disease and Alzheimer's, right? And you can see I'm on the high end of that, so that's pretty darn good. Now, everybody else's that I've seen has been really, really bad with 2 exceptions, and the 2 other people are people that work here at the clinic, and so they're taking pretty darn good care of themselves. I had one patient that's a man that's 71, I think, or 70, that's taken good care of himself. His ratio, I think it was 9 to 1, and then everybody else I've seen has just been above 15 to 1. I told you about the horrible ones. And so if we were to test most of you, I would guess most of you are in the bad to pretty bad range, unfortunately. So if you want to know where you're at, this is the test to do it. And for me, I knew all this stuff before I took my blood work, but this was a wake-up call and a kick in the butt that I'm not exactly where I want to be, and I really need to be even, you know, this much better to get to where I want to be. And so if you need a kick in the butt to let you know where you need to be, I would recommend you do this blood test, because I bet most of you, if you just think, well, I'm just going to eat better and follow his guidelines, you're probably really not going to get to where you should be. You're going to be better, but probably not fantastic. I'd recommend if you do the test today and then you work on your diet, 6 months from now you do the test again. What this test does, it measures what your red blood cells are made of. We talked in the very beginning how every single cell in your body is made up of fat, a membrane of fat that surrounds it. So this shows what your fats are made of. And 6 months from now, if you change your diet, your body will be made of different fats, and you can significantly lower your risk of developing all the diseases we talked about by changing your diet, because you are what you eat. Does anybody have any questions about this? Yes?
I don't have a question
Oh.
for that. So if you do the blood test
Yes?
and it's off the charts the wrong way,
Yeah?
you're gonna go over it with us and tell us the right way to eat or what we.
I just went through everything on the right way to eat. But if you have questions, you can ask me a good question about it. And if you're not sure, read through that paper, the handout,
Right.
read it every day for 7 days in a row, and you should get it all. And if you're still not sure, then buy the book, The Ultimate Omega-3 Diet. And if you're still not sure, you can ask me questions.
Well, yeah, just when you,
And I'm
I
not
just
trying,
want to be assured.
Yeah,
that
and I'm
you're
not
doing
trying-
something, you just kind of.
right, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about that.
Professional.
You know, I just, my time is my most valuable thing that I have, and I just can't take 30 minutes to sit down and talk with every one of you individually about all of this stuff. So that's why we did the class, so that hopefully you understand this stuff. So I don't need to spend 30 minutes with you, but if you have 1 or 2 questions, it'll take a couple minutes, that's okay.
So we can get on and watch this.
Oh yeah, and you can watch this too. That's why I gave you my website, so that you can watch it there. If you're into Facebook, go to my business page, and there's that other interview I told you about, and we're going to post this there. And then once a week, I'm going to send you out a health tip on studies like what I just told you. You get one of those once a week. It's fantastic. So like me on Facebook, and then you'll get all this information and keep up to date with what I'm studying.
So tell me just really briefly what
Yeah.
you eat every day. Just,
Okay, so
just
yeah,
really,
here's average. Okay, so breakfast. For breakfast, I have a smoothie. I have a giant, commercial blender. It's like 60 ounces, and literally it's full. It's the whole 60 ounces. And so I have 20 ounces of coconut milk. I have a tablespoon of flax seeds, a tablespoon of chia seeds. I have a gram of MSM. I have
are they ground?
the flax is the
Flax,
chia seed.
yeah.
I have 2 grams of L-glutamine, that's amino acid that helps your muscles repair. I have about 26 grams of protein from peas. I have 3 bananas, 2 cups of frozen berries, a giant handful of spinach or kale, and that's all. And then I have a green supplement that's like spirulina and chlorella and barley grass that we sell here. I put like a teaspoon of that in it too, and then I blend it up and I drink the entire thing, and that's breakfast.
Does it
That's the
spike your insulin?
it probably does somewhat because there's some sugar in it. I mean, I haven't done my blood test before and after, but compared to your cup of coffee and your donut and your toast and your jam in the morning, it's really fantastic. So I get 6 servings of fruits and vegetables with breakfast on most days. I don't do that every day, but most days that's usually what I'm eating. Lunch varies. I mean, I have salmon sometimes for lunch. Yesterday my lunch was, I had a sweet potato with a bunch of cinnamon on it. Cinnamon actually, and I don't know the mechanism for how it does it, but it makes your body less sensitive to the sugar you're putting into it, and it somehow makes your body less insulin resistant. And I don't know how it works, but so I put cinnamon all over my sweet potatoes to counteract all the carbs that are in those sweet potatoes. And then I think I had a burrito that was a tortilla I got from Trader Joe's made of flax seeds with an avocado on it, and some grilled organic chicken and some lettuce. And I have soup a lot of time, lentil soup. My wife makes great vegetable soups. For dinner we have salmon once or twice a week. We have a lot of soups. We have a lot of big salads. And that's the main stuff that I eat. Yeah, so like when I eat a salad, I'm not kidding, my salad bowl is like this. So I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's like 7 servings of vegetables in a salad. So on Sundays when I have more time to eat, I sit down and it takes me about 30 minutes to eat that whole thing. So that's usually what I have for lunch on Sundays.
What kind of dressing do you use?
Brianna's brand. Brianna's. I like the All-American. It's really fantastic. It's a strawberry vinaigrette one. It's really good too. It's made from canola oil.
So if, on the omega-3s again, if you were to take some sardines every day, would that,
Great.
how
Yeah.
many?
I don't know because I don't eat sardines. You'd have to. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
But you
know.
need just 2,700 milligrams, is that what
Right.
you said?
Yeah.
Or whatever that would equal for
Yeah, it might be in the book. I
Okay.
mean, you could maybe look it up
Okay.
online. I'm not sure.
Okay.
What kind of fish oil do you give to your kids?
Good question. So let's talk about fish oils. And so we have some fish oils here, we have some fish oils there. Those of you that prepaid for the class, you have a $10 credit. And if you want to buy a fish oil supplement, or this blood test, then you can do that tonight and use your $10 credit. So we have one that's called, it's by Designs for Health, it's Omega Vel is the brand name. It's called Lemon Drop Smoothie. It tastes like lemon pudding. I think it's really great. Some kids still have a problem with it. We also have some ones by a company called Metagenics. They're little chewable ones. They're small enough you can swallow them. They're like the size of a pea, or you can chew them up. And so let me mention fish oils, okay? So the brand that I use personally is Metagenics. And so Brenda and I, we broke this down on the price. The least expensive one that we sell, it's called EPA DHA 720. You would have to take 4 capsules per day to get the amount I'm recommending, and it would cost you $1.10 per day to take that much. Now, be aware that concentration can vary greatly depending on the brand. The worst I've ever seen is taking 16 per day to get that much. And the best I've ever seen is 3, and we sell that one. And by the way, krill oil is not a substitute for fish oil. Krill oil has very, very little omega-3s in it. It's still good. It has other stuff that's good called phospholipids. It's not a substitute for fish oils. The one where you take 3 per day, it's called EPA DHA 750, and the price per day, it's going to cost you $2.16. The Lemon Drop Smoothie, 2 teaspoons gives you the amount I recommend. It's going to cost you $1.73, but that one's good because you can give your kids less because they don't need as much, and so it'll last you longer. We also have one that's EPA 500 concentrate. I'm currently taking that one because I told you my lab test shows I need more EPA and not as much DHA. If you have pain, you're probably going to want to take that in addition to the other one. So here's what I'm doing. So I'm taking 3 of those 720s, and I take 1 of the EPA DHA 500, the EPA 500 concentrate. And so that's what I do when I don't eat fish. Okay, so Roz, I think if she's still here.
She is left.
Roz is not here.
She did tell me to show everyone where they were at.
They're right there.
Yep.
Someone that works here at the clinic can help you with that.
And then we also have the kiosk that tests and will test what fish oil tests the best for you.
Yeah, so if you didn't hear that, you can use your coupon for your scan to the kiosk, and you can actually do a scan. It measures what's going on inside your body. It'll make a recommendation what fish oil is best for you. If you want a kit, if you're going to walk back to one of these blood test kits, you're going to walk back to my office, which is that corner, and you talk to Brenda. And if you want some fish oils, there's also some on this side, and Michelle can help you with that. And does anybody else have any questions?
What was the spirulina? Is that how you say it, that you put in?
Yeah,
there?
it's an algae, and it has a bunch of nutrients and stuff in it. And so we have this product called Life Choice Green. It's a powder. It has a whole bunch of, stuff like that, like alfalfa grass and wheatgrass juice and barley and, kelp, I think, and other things that you wouldn't normally eat. But it's good for you.
Question.
Yes?
Do you know anything about Nordic Naturals?
Yeah, Nordic Naturals, it's a good brand, high quality supplement. It's a little more expensive per serving than the ones that we sell here, but it's good. So Nordic Naturals is good.
So where do you buy your salmon?
Where do I buy my salmon? Oh, so I found this place called Zacon Foods, and they have vacuum packed big giant pieces of salmon they get from Alaska, and they sell them like every so often. You sign up on their email list, and they email out like, we're in town and we're going to sell these things. And so we went to a parking lot at Les Schwab Tire, and they deliver all the food to the people. And so we bought a big giant box of it, and I don't know how often they do it. So it's Zacon, Z-A-Y-C-O-N, I think .com is the thing, the website, and so you can check that out. Also, Costco actually has lots of great organic stuff. They have individually vacuum packed wild Alaskan salmon fillets that are like 1 serving size. So that's good. You could buy it from Market Street Grill, or there's other fish places. There's one in Layton, I forget the name of it. There's some in Salt Lake, but I buy mine from Zacon and Costco.
Do you get your organic chicken there too?
I think so. I believe so. I believe we do. Any other questions?
So do you have to use that $10 credit tonight?
Probably not. I'm sure if you came in next week and, I'm sure the secretaries will let you use
Said
it.
I want to use my credit on this product.
Yeah, sure, I'm sure
Okay.
that you can.
And on your smoothie, you don't put a protein supplement in it?
No, I do. I put 26 grams of protein from peas. In addition to this one called glutamine.
What about whey protein?
I'm not crazy about whey protein. It's a little harder to digest, And again, that cow's getting hormones, and you could be getting some of those hormones from the cow. So I mean, it's okay, but I just think the pea protein's better. I think it's cleaner, it's easier to absorb and digest. I think it's better that it's vegetarian too.
Where do you buy that?
There's this website called Swanson's Vitamins, or maybe, I think it's Swanson's with an S, vitamins.com. They have absolutely fantastic stuff, and a lot of their stuff is I mean, cheaper than wholesale. So that's where I get my protein and my MSM, and the chia seeds and the flax seeds, you could buy those in bulk if you look online. Like I bought a 100-pound bag of flax seeds from Australia, and so it's a lot less expensive than if you're buying it in the bulk items at Smith's or something. But you can get it there too.
As long as
Yes.
you don't grind them, then they're fine, right? They won't get.
They'll store better, right? Yeah. I mean, you probably want to have them in an airtight place that's cool, but they'll store longer if they're not ground. If they're ground, you got to put them in the freezer.
Like wheat germ, is that any good at all? Or?
So wheat germs like the protein part of the wheat, and so I don't really use it for anything, so I don't know a lot about it. Yeah, but it's the protein part of the wheat compared to the starchy part of the wheat.
What about salmon, wild salmon from China?
I don't know. I've never seen wild salmon from China. I guess if it's wild, it's probably okay. But having it come all the way from China would probably make me a little nervous.
Yeah, I would say if it's coming from China, I would be nervous about it.
Yeah, I'd be hesitant.
Because their regulations are not as stringent as other countries.
Right. That sounds reasonable to me too. Okay, any other questions?
I have one more.
Joel?
Can you tell me, do you know any of the differences between like soy protein or hemp protein or any of the other proteins aside from whey? What could be better?
Well, yeah, so I wouldn't do soy protein because again, it's got a lot of omega-6s. Hemp protein has 3 times more of the omega-6s than the omega-3s. Soy has 8 times more. So I don't think either of those are fantastic. And so again, I use pea protein because it doesn't have omega-6s.
Is rice milk bad for you?
Just rice milk is okay. The problem is rice milk, they're going to add, I think I believe it's safflower oil they add to it. So you're getting some omega-6s with it. So again, I would do coconut milk instead. That's the same for almond milk.
You mean almond milk is?
It's good for you.
It's omega-6s.
Almond milk is
Right, it has some omega-6s, which is why I do coconut instead.
coconut milk.
Over almond milk.
And rice milk, yes.
Have you ever given goat milk much of a chance? Like,
No, I haven't, but I'm open to it. Again, it's got a ratio of 2 to 1. 2 of the bad, 1 of the good. And it's easier to digest than cow milk. The proteins are more similar to humans. So, yeah, I think goat milk, if you can get it, it's good. Yes?
What about, you said you like coconut milk, what about
Hemp milk, again, you've got 3 times the bad to 1 of the good. So it's better than soy milk, but I wouldn't use it every day. And again, the reason why I'm using pea protein, remember I mentioned about the China study, if you have too much animal protein, it increases risk for cancer. So that's another reason why I wouldn't use whey.
How are you buying your coconut milk?
How do I buy my coconut milk? At Walmart.
It's just in the containers?
Yeah, it's
like
just
the
in
milk
there.
containers?
Right, yeah, I just buy a big...
Not the cans?
No, it's big boxes, the cardboard boxes. I don't know, I buy 6 or 7 at a time and freeze a couple of them.
So you
You can
talked
actually
about,
buy them at Costco in bulk.
Coconut? You
Yeah,
can?
they have the coconut.
Oh, I gotta look
outside.
for that then.
Yeah.
milk, not just oil?
No, it's milk. No, they have the oil too, but this is all the carton.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so, yes, one last one.
do you know much about the doTERRA fish oil?
Yeah, that's the one that's 16 to 1. Don't waste your money on it. It's incredibly expensive and a ripoff. No offense to anyone that uses doTERRA. I like their oils, but their fish oil supplement is ridiculously overpriced and very low concentrated. I said 16 to 1. What I meant to say is you'd have to take 16 of them to get what I'm recommending.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where doTERRA came from. Yes.
How's the capsules? They do have a liquid that's better.
Oh, that's the capsules. They have a liquid that's better, but still very expensive.
What about Melaleuca?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with Melaleuca.
the coupons they passed around, are there more of those?
I was just holding here, I didn't know where they went. There we go, I don't know if they got them over there.
Genetically modified. Are we supposed to stand those just
Okay, so she has a question about genetically modified, should we stay away from it? The answer is yes, or we're not gonna take time to go into it.
They still ran.
Oh, well, good question. So it's not like they're splicing genes from pesticides and herbicides and putting it into it. It was crossbred, basically, to create the canola. Great, so thank you everybody for coming. And if you want one of those kits to test your blood, see Brenda in that back corner. And thank you very much.